Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to our Why Education series. My name's Amy Schweikart. I am here with Matt Margolis, who will be presenting on understanding Medicaid and how to protect your assets legally. Matt is an elder law attorney, and he has been very active in our community, and we are welcome to happen to have him here today. And we'll be able to take questions at the end. And yeah. So with that, I think Matt, if you want to start, we're ready for you.
Yep,
I'm
sounds
going
good.
to share my screen with you. Hold on. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, and I won't be sharing my screen or anything, so it's all good. Whatever you need to do. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. Yeah, as Amy said, I've been doing these talks with the Ys for a long time. I don't even know how long it's been at this point. I think maybe 2016. That might sound too early. I think it was 2016, actually. I think the first Y talk I gave was like right after Trump became president for the first, I guess, the only time so far. So I've been doing this for about 8 years with the Y. Our firm is just big on education in general. We really enjoy speaking to the public as much as we can and educating people. There's a lot of stuff out there that people can find online and their Google searches and whatnot, and some of it's good and some of it's not. And so, we appreciate being very direct with the public and letting people know sort of what's going on, what's new when it comes to estate planning or Medicaid or anything related to what we do. So a little bit of background. Again, my name is Matt Margolis. My partner Lauren Weldon and I have a what I'll call like a boutique estate planning and elder law practice. While I'm a Northbrook resident and I live right near the YMCA, our office is in Park Ridge. We've had our practice now for almost 10 years. I've been in this practicing in this area of the law for about 13 and a half years. And all we do is estate planning and elder law. We don't do anything else. We help, we work with individuals as young as 18, putting powers of attorney together, which we've done a ton of this year, probably more this year than I've done in 12 years prior combined. All the way up to working with folks, that are in their 90s or triple digits. And sometimes it's elder law and sometimes it's just getting their estate planning in order. Not just because somebody is older, whatever that term means, and it means different things to different people, it doesn't mean that you need an elder law attorney. It might just mean that you need an estate planning attorney. I would say the idea of an elder law attorney can be helpful because they tend to look at things through a different lens than just your traditional estate planning attorney. There might be other things that they consider that they'll bring to your attention that maybe another attorney who just sort of focuses on traditional estate planning won't. But again, just because we're older doesn't mean we need an elder law attorney per se. So without further ado, I'll get started. So this talk today really is about giving you a little bit of background on how Medicaid works and really long-term Medicaid or long-term care Medicaid. The Medicaid that we're talking about today is going to be the Medicaid that we apply for that'll cover our stay in a nursing home. I'll touch briefly on supportive living, which is another long-term care facility that we can apply for Medicaid at. But there are other forms of Medicaid out there, what we call sort of community Medicaid, which is the Medicaid that sort of acts as a form of health insurance for somebody that's living at home and maybe under the poverty line. And we are not talking about that. Okay, so just want to be very clear. We're not going to discuss that, and it'll just be focused on the long-term care Medicaid. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we can protect assets. I think a big misunderstanding for people is that sometimes it can be too late to protect assets when it might not be. And then in other situations, it is also where you've got somebody who just doesn't know that they have the ability to protect assets in general. And so hopefully we can shed a little bit of light on that. So one thing that I always like to start with, really in almost any single talk I'm giving, is the idea of powers of attorney. It doesn't really have anything to do with Medicaid, but it can. And I'll tie it in more at the end. But in general, my 3 minutes on powers of attorney, there's two types of powers of attorney in Illinois. All right, to me, these are the most important legal documents, estate planning documents that somebody can have. I think a lot of people just kind of brush them aside or say, well, I can just print them online, or, I got one at the hospital when I went in for surgery. And, these are, to me, my 2 cents, these are not documents we should be printing online. These are not documents we should just be, relying on having a good one that we sign at the hospital when we're, about to go under the knife. We put powers of attorney together because the idea of a power of attorney is that we're naming somebody that can make decisions for us in the event that we are incapacitated and we cannot make our own decisions. All right, and there's 2 different types of powers of attorney in Illinois. There is a healthcare power of attorney, all right, where we're naming somebody that can step in to make medical decisions for us in the event that we cannot make our own. We can name as many people as we want on that healthcare power of attorney, but they're going to be named one at a time in succession, right? So I can name my wife, my brother, my mom, my dad, but it's my wife first, my mom second, my dad third, my brother fourth. Okay, so I can name them all on there, but they're going to be listed in order. And it will only go to the person, it'll only go to my mom if my wife is unable, unwilling. That's really it, unable due to death or incapacity, or unwilling, meaning she just doesn't want to make decisions for me. Okay. We obviously want to make sure that when we're picking people to make medical decisions for us, that we're very careful about that, and that we're picking people that we are that we can trust to make our decision for us. Okay, because it's a big difference between somebody that's just willing to make a decision for us and somebody that's willing to make our decision. If my choice is that I don't want my life artificially prolonged, I want to make sure that the person I'm naming is comfortable doing that, and it's helpful to have a conversation. It's just as powerful for me to find out that somebody is not comfortable making that decision for me as it is to find out that they are, because if they're not, then I should name somebody else. All right, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Property power of attorney, this is the financial power of attorney, all right? Sometimes people you've maybe heard of it, it's called a durable power of attorney. We just call it a property power of attorney, but again, property meaning really anything financial, anything non-healthcare related, okay? Any decisions that are not healthcare related. So it's not property just in the sense of real estate. So if I'm incapacitated, who can step in to make all those non-medical decisions for me, right? Who can have access to my bank accounts, my IRAs, my life insurance policies, who can file my tax returns, who can deal with issues that might arise with Medicare or Social Security, who can hire a caregiver to take care of me if I need one, who can sign the paperwork to move me into a nursing home or assisted living facility if that becomes something that I need. And again, like the healthcare power of attorney, I can name as many people as I want, but they're being named one at a time in succession, okay? If I don't have a power of attorney, okay, so what's the consequence, right? What's the consequence if I don't have a power of attorney? Well, if I don't have power of attorney documents and I'm incapacitated, well, now it's too late for me to sign them. And at this point, somebody close to me will have to hire a lawyer and petition a court to be my guardian. Okay, I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the idea of like maybe naming guardians in a will to take care of our minor kids if they're under the age of 18 and we pass away. Well, it's the same thing for an adult that's over the age of 18. So if we've got somebody that's over the age of 18 that's unable to make their own decisions due to incapacity or mental illness, and they are now unable to sign powers of attorney because they don't have the requisite capacity to sign them, now we need to go through the court process. And that is going to cost a lot of money and take a lot of time. And now we've got to get court permission, okay, permission from a judge who doesn't know us before certain things can be done, like selling our house, moving us into a nursing home, spending our money in certain ways. Most of us, when presented with the option of kind of having a private, dealing with it privately via power of attorney, where we don't need all that court check-in, all the check-ins with the court, versus going through the court process, I think most of us would prefer to do it privately and not have to go that route. So very important documents, all right? Very, very important documents. Highly recommend them for anybody that's over the age of 18, okay? And that's all I'll say on that. Now let's get into the heart of the conversation. So Medicaid. So again, Medicaid related to long-term care facilities, okay? And really, I'm going to really be talking about how it applies to a skilled nursing facility, which is the most common type of the most prevalent, I'd say, facility where somebody will be applying for Medicaid. Okay. So there's different types of long-term care facilities out there. There's assisted living. Well, I should say first there's independent living, which really isn't long-term care. Independent living is look at it like a dorm room or a dorm building, for seniors, right? Because independent living, they're not providing any care. You're maybe being provided meals, maybe some housekeeping, and the idea of sort of living around a lot of people that are your peers, right? And maybe having a little bit more of a community than being at your house, and maybe a little bit more isolated, and sort of wanting more of that community feel. So independent living, people will recall it a type of long-term care. It's really not. There's really no care. So then we go to assisted living. Assisted living is where we need help with some activities of daily living, maybe one or two activities of daily living, but we can still kind of get by and do some things on our own. And then we start to look at, either memory care facilities or skilled nursing facilities. And that's where, and there are some skilled nursing memory care facility combinations. And that's really where we need a lot more help with activities of daily living, whether it's due to the fact that cognitively we are declining due to some form of dementia, and we really need quite a bit of help. And we need to be in a safer environment, or it's due to the fact that physically we're not doing as well, and we might need a lot more help with activities of daily living. Right? It could be we need help getting dressed, showering, being fed, being reminded to take our medication, getting out of bed. So it really there's obviously a range of assistance that individuals might need as they age. And sort of that higher level of care is what we look at in a skilled nursing facility. And then when we talk about supportive living facilities, I think for the most part, people are not as familiar with supportive living facilities. And these are going to be where the level of care is more similar to assisted living. Okay, so it's where somebody needs help with maybe a few activities of daily living, but they can still kind of get by a bit on their own. So it's not quite the level of need as you would have in a skilled nursing facility. By definition, every single long-term care facility that is under the umbrella of supportive living takes Medicaid. Every single supportive living, if it is called a supportive living facility, they take Medicaid. Every single one. Okay. Whereas when it comes to skilled nursing facilities or a nursing home, some take Medicaid and some don't. Okay, so not every single nursing home takes Medicaid. There are actually plenty that don't. Okay, so in our general area, I think based on our clientele, I know a lot more that take Medicaid than don't, because most of the time when people come to see us, those that can afford to pay for their long-term care forever and ever don't have as much of a need to discuss things with an elder law attorney, right? Whereas those that know that their money will potentially run out at some point have a lot more of a desire to maybe come see us and talk to us to see if there's anything that we can do to help. So, I can tell you that Whitehall, which has a great reputation, it's in Deerfield, right there at like Waukegan and Lake Cook Road, right around there roughly. They do not take Medicaid. It is 100% private pay. Okay. Then you've got Glenview Terrace, which is in Glenview. I want to say it's like on Greenwood, right off of Lake. They do take Medicaid. Now, every place that takes Medicaid also it will take private pay, right? Just because they take Medicaid doesn't mean like, well, if you're not on Medicaid, you can't move in. No, they would rather have you in there paying $12,000 a month versus taking Medicaid, which they might get, $7,000 total between, whatever your income is, whatever income you have to provide, along with whatever the state's reimbursement is. But there are plenty of nursing homes around here that take Medicaid. And I say around here, I would assume most people that are tuning in live sort of on the greater North Shore. And also with that said, I just want to maybe do away with a misnomer that I feel like is out there that, Medicaid facilities are like state funded, and they're not great and they're terrible. There are obviously some that do fit that bill. There are some that are not great and that I would never want any of my clients to be in. I would definitely not want any of my family members to be in. There are some maybe where I remember driving by even before I got into this area of the law, north side of the city along Sheridan, near, I don't know, Pratt or Tui over there. And there's some nursing homes right in the city. And I remember seeing folks in wheelchairs sitting outside smoking cigarettes. And I think you look at places you're like that and you're like, how is that happening? How are they allowing the residents to do that? And I'm not speaking badly of those places, but they're just to give you, so all I'm saying is there are some places that obviously are not great and you would never want to have a loved one in. But there are plenty of places around here where, again, you've got people on the first floor with a couple $1 million in the bank paying $12,000 a month, and you've got people on the second floor in the same building that are down to nothing and on Medicaid. And in most cases, the biggest difference will be that when you're on Medicaid in a lot of nursing homes, you're going to share a room. There are very few, I will say there are very few nursing homes, I believe, that if you're on Medicaid, you're going to have your own private room. There are some, I'm not saying there are not, but more often than not, you probably have to share a room. Okay, so in a lot of cases, that might be the biggest difference. I'm definitely not a believer that you get treated any differently if you're on Medicaid versus not being on Medicaid. And I think anybody that says you do, I don't believe that story. So again, to me, it's just more of making sure that when we're looking at a place to move somebody into, that we're taking our time. We're spending time looking at places. We're looking them up. We're looking up reviews. We're going to Medicare.gov, and we can see like what their rating is. And I can also tell you, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but I think a lot of this is just very important for people to understand. I will definitely say that the more a family member, more visits from a family member that somebody gets in a nursing home, the better they will be taken care of. I can just promise. I can almost guarantee you that. Because if the staff is going to be conscious of the people that are being visited more often, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong by the staff, and you can take it with a grain of salt. It's just things that we've seen over time. But if I'm visiting my dad very often, or various family members are visiting my dad fairly often, they're going to be conscious of that. They're going to want to make sure that when we visit, it looks like my dad's being taken care of well, versus the person that the nursing home might know has no family. Nobody's visiting them. Now, I'm not saying it's right. Believe me, that is not what I'm saying here. But I'm just telling you how it is. Okay? So hopefully that's helpful for any of you that do have somebody that might end up in that situation. I think it's just something to consider. So before we get into a nursing home from a long-term care standpoint, in a lot of cases, what happens is we might have a loved one that ends up in the hospital first, right? I'm not saying in every case, but in a lot of cases, it sort of starts with a hospital visit, right? Maybe somebody fell, maybe they had, a urinary tract infection, something that they're dealing with, took them to the hospital, right? So a lot of times they're in the hospital first, again, physical, cognitive, whatever the reasons are, and then they'll at some point get discharged, in a lot of cases, to a nursing home for rehab. Okay, so if for anybody that's not aware, most of the time, when an older adult is engaging in rehab, in most cases that's being done at a skilled nursing facility. Okay, now one thing to be very conscious of is that if we are being discharged from the hospital to a skilled nursing facility, Medicare will cover a portion of our rehab at the skilled nursing facility if we meet certain qualifications. Okay, so we need to make sure that we have 3 overnights in the hospital that are classified as inpatient status. Okay, not observation, inpatient. Just because you spend a night in a hospital does not mean that you're classified as inpatient. And a lot of people don't realize that. Okay, now maybe all of you do, and I'm speaking to a bunch of people that know everything, at least about that. Okay, but I've had plenty of people reach out to us, and they were shocked and confused as to how their loved one was being classified, because it was like my husband was in the nursing home for 5 nights, but he was under observation for 3. He was only inpatient for 2. I figured he would be inpatient for all 5, right? He was overnight. Again, overnight does not mean inpatient. So you really need to be making sure that if you've got a husband or wife or mom or dad or aunt or uncle or brother or sister, whoever it is in the hospital, check in with that nurse. Check in with that nurse that's on duty, or the nurses that are on duty taking care and checking in on your loved one, to see how they're being classified. Because what happens is for Medicare to kick in and cover the rehab when we go into a skilled nursing facility from the hospital, 3 of those nights need to be inpatient status. Okay, so this is crucial to know this, okay? Because let's say I get discharged from the hospital, I get moved to, Glenview Terrace for rehab. What will happen is Medicare, if I have a Medicare supplement, now Medicare Advantage plans work differently. I can't really speak to them. A lot of them work where I'll kind of comment a little bit, but if you have a Medicare Advantage plan, I highly recommend that you speak to whoever you bought it from, or to try to get, talk to somebody about and get some advice about it. And if you want somebody to talk to, you can shoot me an email and I can connect you with a couple different people that sell these Medicare supplements and Advantage plans, and they're happy to educate you. Because there's so much information out there regarding these plans. And Medicare Advantage plans, typically you're paying less, but the benefits can be not as great. Medicare supplements, you're paying a little bit more, and the benefits tend to be better. So with a Medicare supplement, with a true Medicare supplement, the way it works is that if I go into a nursing home for rehab from the hospital, and I have 3 nights of inpatient status, or at least 3 nights of inpatient status, Medicare will cover up to 100 days of my rehab. Okay. The first 80 days, they're going to cover 100%. So Medicare will cover my rehab. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that I get 100 days of rehab. It doesn't mean that I get 100 days of rehab. So it could be day 23 and the nursing home has a meeting with my family and says, listen, Matt has plateaued. We're trying to rehab him, but he's hit a plateau. He's not either can't do anything more to help himself, or he's just not trying. And Medicare is going to stop. Medicare is going to stop paying in 5 days. He can stay here long term, right? And it's $345 a day, right? So he can stay here as long as you want him to. But he's really not a rehab candidate anymore. Rehab means that you're trying. You're trying to get better. The whole goal of rehab, and the whole reason why Medicare is willing to cover it, is they want to help pay for somebody to get them back in their home, right? They want them out of the nursing home. So if somebody's not making progress and they're really not able to rehab anymore, they're going to stop. They're going to stop paying for it. Okay. So to clarify what I was saying, the first 80 days, Medicare will cover at 100%, and the last 20 days, Medicare will cover at 80%. Okay. So, take it down here. So when it comes to a Medicare Advantage plan, they work a little bit different. So Medicare Advantage plans work a little bit different in the sense that they might pay for the first 20 days, and then you might be out of pocket for a certain amount of days after that at 100%. And then I think it's days like 21 through 40, you're out of pocket. And then days like 41 through 100, Medicare kicks in again. So you really have to understand those. You really have to understand your Medicare Advantage plan, because honestly, they are very different and people don't understand them. And there can really be some issues with them. And people all of a sudden don't realize, and they're getting a bill from the nursing home and they're like, why am I paying all of this out of pocket? Not thinking that they should, thinking that, they ultimately should not be paying for it. So again, if you have a Medicare Advantage plan, highly recommend you look into it. Okay. Highly recommend you look into it. I misspoke. Okay. I'm going to backtrack and say one thing about the Medicare, what Medicare will cover with a Medicare supplement. I apologize. Medicare covers the first 20 days with a Medicare supplement. Medicare covers the first 20 days, 100%. Sorry. 20 days, 100%. And that's whether you have an Advantage plan or a supplement. If you have a supplement, a Medicare supplement, the supplement will, Medicare covers 80% for the remaining up to 100 days. So Medicare covers 80% for the last 80 days. But if you have a supplement, your supplement will pick up the rest. So if you have a Medicare supplement, you could potentially be not out of pocket for up to 100 days. Sorry, I apologize. It's been a while since I've given this talk. The Medicare Advantage, again, works a little bit different. You have to talk to somebody about that. But I'm fairly certain that 20 days is covered, but then the first 20 days after that, 21 through 40, are not going to be covered. Okay, but talk to your person, shoot me an email, I'll connect you with somebody if you want to get more information. Making sure that your rehab is covered and knowing what that's going to look like is extremely important, because I can tell you right now that while it might cost $350 a day for me to live long-term in a nursing home, for rehab, you could be looking at anywhere from $400 to $650 a day, because you're getting a lot more services. If I'm just living long-term in a nursing home, you're basically paying for room and board and meals. And the idea that somebody will come along and help you out, obviously, as you need it. But with rehab, you're getting all of that, plus you're getting, PT, OT, various forms of therapy to try to get you back. So they're providing a lot more services. The cost obviously is a lot more. Okay. So we've had people reach out to us where they got a bill from the nursing home that was like $22,000 for a month for that first month of rehab. Again, thinking Medicare was going to cover it, and them not realizing that they were not classified as inpatient status long enough. Okay. So again, I can't harp on that enough. Please, you have to make sure you are staying on top of that for your loved one in the hospital. All right. So now let's talk about a situation where we're past the Medicare, we're past the rehab. Now we ultimately know we're going to be in the nursing home in a more of a long-term setting. Okay. Either we started with rehab, or maybe we never had rehab and we just moved right from our home into the nursing home. So the way that Medicaid works, and again, I'm talking about more from a nursing home standpoint than supported living. Supported living is a little bit different. If I'm moving into a nursing home and applying for Medicaid, okay, let's say I'm a single person first, and then I'll talk about a married couple. If I'm a single person, I can have $17,500 in my name. Okay, total assets, checking accounts, savings accounts, IRAs, 401ks, cash value of life insurance, you name it. Total of all my accounts can be no more than $17,500. Now, this is actually a huge jump. Up to about a year or a year and a half ago, it was $2,000. And it was $2,000 forever. Okay, so I can have up to $17,500 in my name. From an income standpoint, I get to keep $30 a month of my income. So let's just, it doesn't matter whether I get Social Security, maybe I get a pension, maybe I get a combination of both. Let's say my income is $2,500 a month. Okay. I can pay for my Medicare supplement, so I can still keep my Medicare supplement in place. And it makes sense to, okay, because I might have certain doctors that I'm seeing or certain specialists that I'm seeing that don't take Medicaid as a supplement to Medicare. And so it makes sense for me to keep that supplement, and it doesn't cost me anything. I can keep that supplement. I can pay for it. I get to keep $30 on top of that. So I get $30 of spending money a month. And then the rest of my income goes to the nursing home. Okay. Okay. So that's what I have to pay the nursing home. And then Medicaid kicks in the rest, right? Obviously not paying the nursing home the full amount, whatever they're charging, but the nursing home gets a smaller amount and Medicaid pays for that. Lastly, there's a look back. Okay, so Medicaid has a 5-year look back. So when I go to apply for Medicaid, Medicaid wants to see what did Matt do with his assets over the last 5 years. And just to let you know what they're really looking for, did I give anything away? Right? It's not a problem that I was paying my mortgage. It's not a problem that I was buying groceries. It's not a problem that I, just bought a $2,000 flat screen TV last year. It's a problem if I sold my house to my son for $10,000 and the house was worth $200,000. Because technically what Medicaid's looking for, it's not necessarily that looking, we use the term gifts. We say that Medicaid's looking to see if we gifted any assets, but really what Medicaid's looking for is, did we make any transfers for less than fair market value? Right? A gift would be, I wrote my daughter a check for $5,000 for doing nothing, just for being my daughter. And Medicaid doesn't care if my daughter was going through a divorce and I was helping pay her divorce attorney. Medicare doesn't care that I gave my son $6,000 to help pay for my grandson's college. Medicaid doesn't care that I, wanted to help my kids out by paying for my granddaughter's horseback riding lessons. Okay, those are gifts. And they're going to be treated the same way as me selling my $200,000 house to my son for $10,000. Medicaid would say I gave away $190,000, right? Or I sold my car that's worth $10,000 to my son for $1,000. I gave away $9,000, right? There was a $9,000 transfer for less than fair market value. These things will be an issue. Okay. And I can tell you that I've been doing this long enough now. People always come in and meet with us and they've like outsmarted the system, right? They're like, oh, my mom has been just like, she's been pulling out $1,000 of cash out of the bank a month and storing it under her mattress or putting it in a shoebox in the closet. Or, my mom's been sending me money. This is more of a newer thing. My mom's been like, well, send me money through Venmo or Zelle or PayPal. These are all issues. And I can tell you the Zelle, the Venmo, the PayPal, these are things that Medicaid is really, really, they're aware of it, right? I mean, the state is not stupid. Okay, they're aware of what people are doing. They are up with they are up with the times, just like us. And they are now asking about all of this stuff. And there'll be people out there that might say, because if you look at the Medicaid policy very strictly, I forget exactly what it says. My partner at this point does majority of the Medicaid work at our firm. But I can tell you that right now the Medicaid policy says something to the effect that like Medicaid has the right to ask about any transfers that are over like $500 or $1,000. The reality is that when we do Medicaid applications for clients, we have situations where the state is asking about a $28 check or $150 check. So they can ask about anything. All right. So again, it's not like if we are giving smaller amounts, it's not going to be an issue. It will be. It's going to be an issue if we also have like very consistent payments. Like I write a check to my daughter for $200 and I give it to her every month. I mean, it doesn't, again, I don't care if it's $100, $200, $50. They see something that's reoccurring like that. I don't care the amount, they are going to ask about it. Listen, we might get lucky and have a caseworker at the state that's just like doesn't care, or it's so much more rare now than it was like 10 years ago. I'm not even saying it was more common, but things maybe slipped a little bit more 10 years ago. At least we saw them slip a little bit more. We would never advise clients that they should plan on things slipping, but they did. They're not. It would be very rare for these things to kind of get past the folks at the state at this point. Okay. So be very conscious that, if you're, and this is very common situations where you've got like an adult child that's out there, shopping for their parents or buying stuff for their parents on Amazon because their parents aren't really hip to using Amazon or whatever, and so you're out there buying things for your parents, paying things for them, and then they're reimbursing you, right? Nothing wrong. They're writing you a check, or they're Zelling you or Venmoing or sending you money via PayPal to reimburse you for some things that you bought for them. I don't have a problem with that, but you need to keep track, keep receipts of these things that you're paying for and buying for your parents. Make a chart, make a list. The more evidence that we can give the state when we are applying for Medicaid, the better. You don't want to be in a situation where you are all of a sudden now having to backtrack and go through bank statements and go through all of these things that you did 5 years ago that you can barely remember. So keep track of these things. Because here's what happens, right? Let's say that I go to apply for Medicaid and Medicaid looks through all my accounts for the last 5 years, and they total up and they say that over the last 5 years, it doesn't matter if it was 59 months ago or 2 months ago, over the last 5 years, I gave away $30,000. Okay, $30,000 in what they deem to be transfers for less than fair market value. Here's how it works. Medicaid will say, okay, Matt, you're approved for Medicaid. And let's just say the nursing home costs $10,000 a month to make it easy. You're approved for Medicaid, but you need to figure out a way to pay for the next 3 months. Because we're going to take the amount that you gave away, $30,000, and we're going to divide it by the monthly cost of care. You gave away 3 months worth of care. Had you not given away that $30,000, you wouldn't be applying for Medicaid for the next 3 months, right? You wouldn't be asking the state to pay for you. So now you've got to figure out a way to pay for the next 3 months. And after you do that, then Medicaid will kick in. Now, At one point, when we could only have $2,000 in our name, that made that situation a lot more difficult. I mean, now I have 17,500, maybe coupled with my income. If I've got a really, really high pension, maybe I can pay for the 3 months. If I've got $6,000 coming in from my pension, but that's pretty uncommon, right? The average person doesn't have a $6,000 pension. The average person probably has maybe $1,500 to $2,000 coming in from Social Security, if that. I don't even know if that's the average. And so these are situations where we might be in a rock and a hard place. Maybe we're asking our kids who we gifted the money to somehow return it to us and help us pay. But in most cases where money is gifted, I can tell you that it's normally it's because their kids or whoever they gave it to needed the money. In most cases, it's not because they had this like sophisticated plan to try to reduce the size of their estate to apply for Medicaid. Okay, that's just not the case. And again, not to be harsh, but Medicaid doesn't care about your sob story. They don't care about the fact that your son was going through a divorce, your daughter, lost her job. I'm sympathetic to those things, but the state's not. Okay. So again, be conscious of these things. I have also told clients that this might sound silly, and this isn't really going on a tangent, but there are some adult children who are very helpful. Maybe they left, maybe they stopped working to help their parents, or maybe just in general that they are their parents' full-time caregiver. And maybe the parents have been helping support them because maybe they never worked, or maybe they haven't worked in a really long time. And the parents have some money, but the kids don't, or whatever. We've told these kids, and this might sound silly, you can put a caregiver agreement together. I could have a caregiver agreement between my dad and me. If I'm helping him on a daily basis, it might sound silly, but there's nothing wrong with us putting an agreement together where my dad's paying me. We typically recommend to our clients have it, if it's a family member, have it be much less than whatever the going rate is for a live-in caregiver, which is like $300 to $400 at this point, maybe more a day. But maybe we put an agreement together and my dad's going to pay me $100 a day to be his caregiver. And that way he's giving me $3,000 a month. And maybe I need some of that. And maybe I don't need all of it. And maybe that's a way for me to hold on to some of it if he ever needs it down the road. But there's nothing wrong with that, as long as I'm actually providing care. Of course, I'm not suggesting to anybody here that if you're not providing care to create a caregiver agreement. Absolutely not. But if you were already in that role of providing care and you are doing all these things, there is nothing wrong with that. Now, I would recommend seeking the advice of an elder law attorney, whether it's me or somebody else. I don't really care, but there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, I'm gonna move on because I want to make sure that we get to everything I want to get to. So that's how Medicaid works for a single person. When we have a married couple, it's a little bit different. Okay. If I'm the one going into the nursing home and my wife is the one living at home, we call her the community spouse, right? She's living in the community still. I am still, and just to be very clear, in that first example, as a single person, I can't own a house. Okay. I can have $17,500 total. If I have a house, I've got to sell it. And then once I get the proceeds, then I'm going to have to spend down all that money at the nursing home and then apply for Medicaid after that. So I can't have a house plus the $17,500. I want to be very clear. I can have $17,500 in total assets. No house, no car. Now, again, if I have a house and I'm down to $17,500, I can go in the nursing home and I can actually apply for Medicaid. But what's going to happen is once the house sells, I'll sort of get temporarily kicked off Medicaid. I'll have to then spend that money monthly at the nursing home. And then once I get back under $17,500, I'll get back on Medicaid. Okay, just give an idea as to how that would work. If I'm married, okay, I'm still limited to $17,500 in my name. My wife can have up to about $120,000 in her name. Okay, it's $120,780 to be exact. So she can have up to $120,000 in her name, plus a house, plus a car. Now, there's no limit on the value of the house. Clients always ask, does it have to be, can the house only be up to $400,000 or $300,000, or house can be $1 million? Most cases when somebody's applying for Medicaid, they probably don't have $1 million house. Most likely, not to mean they can't, right? Plenty of people bought houses years and years ago for very little money and that are now, in Wilmette or somewhere on the North Shore that's worth $900,000, but they're still living month to month on their Social Security. I mean, those situations do exist. I'm not saying they don't, but there's no maximum value of the house. Okay. So again, I can have $17,500. My wife can have $120,780. plus a house, plus a car. In some of these situations, let's say we have $400,000 and I'm going into a nursing home and my wife wants to try to protect some of the money, but we still have an outstanding mortgage on the house. Well, we might take some of that $400,000 knowing that we can only keep about 137 combined between the two of us, and we might pay down our mortgage. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a gift. We're putting money into an asset that we are allowed to keep. So these are where there's just like different little tiny strategies that come up that are helpful. We've had clients over the years where I worked with a married couple. They were renting an apartment and they had like $600,000. The husband was going into a nursing home. I advised the wife to buy a house. She bought a house. It was an easy way for her to immediately protect $400,000. And then they had to spend down a little bit of money at the nursing home, and then they applied for Medicaid. Okay, that's rare. I mean, that's happened once in the last 13 years of doing this. But these things come up. Okay. And then there's the 5-year, and then I'm sorry, from an income standpoint. So my wife can have $3,715 a month of income. Okay. So her income on a monthly basis can be $3,715 a month. I get to keep my $30 a month still. Okay. So Kim, I'll answer your question, but I'm going to wait till the end. I just want to make sure that I get through everything I want to get through. I'm not ignoring it. Or Kimberly, sorry. So how does this work? So let's just say that my income, let's say I get $3,000 a month from Social Security, and my wife's Social Security is $1,000. Okay. Now remember, bless you, Amy. Now I'm limited to $30 a month, but my wife can have $3,715 a month of income. So let's say my Social Security is $3,000, hers is $1,000. I can pay for my Medicare supplement. Right. So let's say I pay my $250 to Blue Cross Blue Shield, keep my $30. All right. So now if I was single, now I'd have $27.20 that I would have to give to the nursing home. But my wife has $1,000 of income. I can transfer my excess income that would otherwise go to the nursing home if I was single, and I can give it to my wife to get her up to $3,715. I can't put her over that number, but I can get her up to it. Okay. So if she had $2,000 of income and I had $2,700 that I could potentially give to her, I could give her $1,700, and then I would have to give the nursing home $1,000. Okay. This $3,715, this went up almost 50% of what it used to be. I want to say it was 20. It's been long enough that I'm forgetting. I want to say it used to be like 2,600 or 20. I think it was 2,739. So it went up about $1,000 a month, which is significant. It's $12,000 a year of income that a spouse is now able to keep that they couldn't keep prior. So we can transfer that income to the spouse. Okay. And then the 5-year look back applies to both of us. So it's not like because I'm applying for Medicaid, if there's, accounts that are in my wife's name only, like IRAs or whatever, if she was gifting money from them, that matters just as much as if I was gifting money from any of my accounts or a joint account. Okay, so they're going to look at everything. If you're married, they look at it all. One of the biggest differences between applying for Medicaid in a skilled nursing facility and applying in a supportive living facility, two things. One is that the income I can keep on a monthly basis is $90 a month instead of $30. So I get to keep $90 a month of my income versus $30. And then with a supportive living facility, so with a skilled nursing facility, what they do is if there's a penalty, right? If I gifted money, remember I gifted that $30,000 and the nursing home cost $10,000 a month. And so it was going to be a 3-month penalty. They take the amount that I gifted divided by the monthly cost of care at that nursing home to calculate the penalty. For supportive living, they have like a certain dollar amount per day that they use as the divisor to figure out the penalty. I'm forgetting what it is exactly right now, to be honest with you. Let's just say it's $161 a day. So that would equate to, roughly $4,800 or so a month. And it's a little bit higher than that because I want to say it comes out to a little over $5,000 a month. But that's what they would use as the divisor to figure out the penalty. It doesn't matter if the supportive living facility only costs $3,500 a month or whether it costs $7,000 a month. They're going to use this specific divisor no matter what for supportive living. Okay, so I think knowing that is helpful, but I don't think that's going to make or break anything that any of you are doing out there to to sort of prepare for a supportive living facility or skilled nursing facility. Okay, so what can we do to protect our assets, right? Now that we've got about 8 minutes left. So Medicaid has a 5-year look back period. So what that means is that if there is certain planning we can do that as long as we've done the planning and more than 5 years has passed until we ever have to apply for Medicaid. Not more than 5 years has passed until we might need to go into a nursing home, but more than 5 years has passed before we need to apply for Medicaid, then we can potentially do planning that can protect our assets. Let me kind of describe what I'm discussing here. So there's various types of trusts out there, and I don't have time to go into all of them. But there's a certain type of trust that we would create. We call it a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. Really what it is it's an irrevocable trust. So it's an irrevocable trust that the way it works is, let's just say that my wife and I are looking to protect our assets. The way this trust works, in a very simple level, we're creating the trust, we're deciding who gets all of our stuff when we die, and we're going to put assets in it. And the assets that we're going to put into the trust, and let's just say it's a couple bank accounts that total $150,000 or $200,000, right? We're going to retitle our checking account at Chase with $150,000. We are giving up control. With this type of trust, we have to give up control. The most common type of trust out there, which is a revocable living trust, okay, which most people that have a trust, that's what they have. That's not a restrictive trust. If I have a revocable trust, I act the way I act every day with my accounts is how I acted prior. I have access to everything. I do whatever I want. It's my money to spend, etc. With an irrevocable trust, if we want the protection from Medicaid, my wife and I are going to retitle our bank account to the trust, but we cannot be the trustees. So we cannot be in charge of whatever's in the trust. So in most cases, this planning really works if we've got adult children that we trust. Okay, they're now going to be in charge of that account. Okay, also on the face of the trust, our kids are the beneficiaries. So the trust has to look like it's not for our benefit at all during our lifetime. It basically has to look like we gave out the money. It's for the benefit of our kids, and our kids have control over it, and it is not ours anymore. Okay. Now, without getting into all the details because we don't have time, there are still ways that we can have access to the money through our kids in a way that will not impact us from an Medicaid standpoint. So it doesn't mean like we've just totally relinquished our right to ever have access to that money if we need it. Because in some cases, we do this planning, we set up this irrevocable trust, and we never need it. Right? We never need Medicaid, but at some point we need the money. I look at this type of trust for folks as like an insurance policy to some extent. Maybe you'll take advantage of it at some point, and if you do, not great, but great because you've protected some assets. Or maybe you'll never take advantage of it. And you know what? For the cost that you paid for it versus when you look at how much you pay for auto insurance or homeowners insurance or long-term care insurance, all these things that you might never have an accident, you might never burn your house down, etc. Probably not terrible. Okay. So we can still have access to the money. But the goal is that we're putting money in this trust. And the idea is that we are not applying for Medicaid for at least 5 years from the time that the bank account was retitled to the trust. Okay, because I can create that trust today for clients, but if they don't actually put that bank account or retitle that bank account into the trust for another year from now, then that bank account is not protected for 5 years from the time they actually retitle it, not 5 years from the day the trust was created. Now, in some cases, we work with clients and we're pretty confident that they're going to have more than 5 years before Medicaid will ever come into the picture. Right? There's some clients that come to us, they might be in their 60s or early 70s. They're very healthy. There's nothing going on, but they don't have tons of assets. And they're concerned that if something happens to one of them, they don't want to impoverish their spouse, or they want to make sure that they leave something for their kids or grandkids, right? Those are typically the two reasons why people will create these trusts. And so in those cases, we feel pretty confident we're not going to need to touch the money for 5 years. But then in other cases, we've got clients where, we meet, we discuss it, and they'll say, what do you think? And I'll say, you're in a gray area because you're not needing care, but you're 85 or you're 82 and you're not needing care, but you're also already to be showing some signs of some health issues. It's not out. And coming from them, it's like, we know it's not crazy that one of us might need a caregiver in 2 years, or we could need to go into a facility in the next 3 or 4 years. We might still create that trust. We just want to make sure that whatever we're putting in there, we're still leaving enough money outside of it that if they do need care over the next 5 years, they can pay for it. that makes sense, right? So again, that's why I say it's not to say that we need to do this planning and make sure that you will never need to go into a nursing home or supportive living facility for 5 years. It just means that we need to feel pretty comfortable that whatever we're putting in here, we're still leaving enough outside of this trust that if you had care needs that popped up, you've got enough to cover yourselves for the next couple of years until you get to that 5-year period. Or pretty close to it, knowing that if you really need to pull money out of the trust, you can. There's ways to do it. Again, we're not going to go into all the details of that, but there's still ways that we can access it. That's if we have more than 5 years, or we think we've got more than 5 years on our side. To be very brief, there's situations where we can still plan for people at the last minute. So there's people that come to us, and the wife comes to us with the adult son, and her husband's in rehab, and they just had a meeting, and the nursing home saying in 5 days Medicare is going to stop paying, and it's going to be, he can stay here, but it's going to be $400 a day. And so the wife is obviously freaking out, worried. Hey, we've got $400,000. I'm 75. I mean, this money we could be spent down to the 137,000 that we're allowed to keep between the two of us in a year, or 2 years, or whatever. And then I'm left with this. So there's still planning we can do at the last minute. Okay. Potentially, where we can, above and beyond the 137, if we're dealing with a married couple, above and beyond the 137,000 they can keep total, right? The 120 for the spouse and the 17 for the one going in the nursing home, plus the house. So they get to keep all that without us doing anything. But there might be planning that we can do, or we can protect about half of what they have above that. So if they've got another 500,000 above that, that would be at risk, we potentially could protect another 250,000, even at the last minute, even where we don't have 5 years on our side. Similar in a similar situation, if we have a single individual and he or she's going to a nursing home, and we're meeting with the adult kids, and they have this desire to protect assets. The one thing I will say in these situations, from we're going to call this more of like a crisis plan than have been planning a little bit more proactively, which is if we have more than 5 years, we're being a little more proactive. In more of these crisis scenarios, this is where having powers of attorney becomes so important, because we might be dealing with an individual who can no longer sign documents on their behalf, and we need their power of attorney to sign documents. And I'm going to go a step beyond and say, not just having powers of attorney in place, because your standard, or what we call your statutory power of attorney for property, that financial power of attorney that most traditional estate planning attorneys have out there, does not allow the person that you're naming, which is called your agent, to engage in this asset protection planning, where it would not allow them to create an irrevocable trust that's not for your benefit, and all these things. Whereas our firm, where again, sort of where the elder law aspect comes into play, and obviously not just our firm, plenty of other elder law firms around here do this, but we take the statutory power of attorney for property, we add extra language to it that allows the power of attorney, that allows the agent to engage in all the type of work and planning that would need to be in the document to allow them to protect assets in these situations. So we've had clients come in later years where they might have really good powers of attorney, but we recommend updating them just so that we can have this extra language in the document, because if and when this situation ever arose, we've had situations where we've been unable to help a client protect assets because it's literally rested on the fact that they did not have the right language in the power of attorney. And not having a paragraph or a couple sentences in the power of attorney caused us to not be able to protect $50,000, $100,000, $200,000. So really, again, back to my point about really making sure that we've got good powers of attorney in place, especially as we age, and having other language in these powers of attorney that can be very helpful. Again, something really to consider. So 1016, I know I kind of raced through that stuff at the end. I'm happy to stick around for a couple questions. I know there's one here, which I'll answer right now. And then if anybody else has any questions, you can type it into the chat box as I'm talking, or you can show your screen and turn yourself off mute and ask. But Kimberly, to your question, so caregiver agreements, will the son or daughter caregiver need to pay taxes on that income is no longer a gift? So I would say, I mean, the technically the correct answer I should give you is that you would be reporting that, that you'd work with a CPA and report that. I would just go out on a limb and say that for better or worse, I could probably guarantee you that 95% of the clients that we've done these caregiver agreements for, while we mention that, I can almost guarantee none of them do. It's sort of similar to the idea of, a full-time babysitter, maybe not reporting it when it's cash or whatever it is. It should be done. It should be, it should be reported. It is income at that point. It is not a gift. So hopefully that, I don't know if you have a further question, but yeah, it should be reported. I'd recommend that and working with a CPA to figure out how that works.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is a college fund considered a gift, like a 529?
Yep.
It
Yep.
is.
So really good point that you bring up. So yeah, me putting money into a college fund for my somebody putting money into a college fund for their 529 plan for their grandkids, it's going to count as a gift. This should be obvious, but sometimes it's not. So the IRS allows us to gift a certain amount of money per year, and it doesn't come off of our estate tax, limit of $4 million as Illinois residents. But the IRS and Medicaid don't jive. So yeah, I can gift $18,000 a year to my grandkids, but if I apply for Medicaid within 5 years of that, all of that's going to count as a gift.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
But yeah, you can, of course, Lori.
Yeah, you talked about supportive living. Can you name a couple of places in the area that provide supportive living?
It would be hard for me to do that, Gloria. I actually, to be honest, I probably couldn't. I will tell you that there are not many I can't think of any that are on really the North Shore. So the supportive living facilities that really exist around here, you're looking more at like Lake and McHenry County to the north, and then you're looking at them being on the flip side, being in the city. There are not too many in this general area. I can put my information in the chat box, or obviously you can probably get it from the YMCA. I don't know if it's on the YMCA website, but you can always shoot me an email, and I can ask my my partner or Natalie that works with us. They might have a better list at this point, or be able to give you some better ones than I can. So
thank you.
Feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to if we can get you a few.
Gloria, I'll include Matt's email address. Oh, there you go. I was going to send her an email.
The chat box there.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, when you say there's a 5-year look back, then what, you're saying what, the 137,000 if a couple is married, if they have assets that they've, say, given to a 529 plan within the past 5 years that are over that, are they just completely disqualified and we shouldn't even consider Medicaid anymore? I'm kind of, confused at, when to just like not even go down that road.
So you're saying, okay, so let me make sure I'm understanding your question, Kimberly. So is the question like, all right, so let's say that I'm applying for Medicaid. I'm down to 17,500 and my wife's got 120, but in the last 5 years, we've contributed more than 137
to
529 plans.
As colleges are pretty expensive. So sure, right.
Yeah.
Like what's the what's the threshold for gifting that just takes you completely out of the Medicaid consideration?
Well, if you've gifted more in the last 5 years than you have left at the time you're applying, then you're running a negative, right? And now as I say that, let's say we gifted 137 and we're allowed to keep 137. Okay, so it would be a wash. Or let's say we've gifted 150 and we're able to keep 137. We still have to, take into account that my wife and I have income coming in. And so that could play a huge factor based on your question. Do we have $3,000 a month of income coming in where we could use some of that to supplement, and we could actually pay the penalty to the nursing home for the 150,000, or do we not have enough income where we couldn't offset that? If that makes sense. It's hard for me to say like exactly when it would or would not make sense. My 2 cents, honestly, is that these situations are so specific and individual, and based on so many other circumstances than just that it's probably worth a consultation with an elder law attorney to spend a couple $100 to sit down and really see, all right, based on these facts, what can we do? That's probably the better way to put it. Other than just, it's hard for me to just answer that question and say this is what I would do or what I would not do.
So I guess I'm confused. Is the $137,000 like assets they look at right there, or is it like what their like annual or monthly can be? Like, I guess
No,
I got confused with like what they can get per month versus what they're looking at as far as their assets at the time they're applying.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So to be clear, let's say my wife and I are applying for Medicaid and it's October 1st. Our bank statements that are in my name cannot exceed 17,500. So there have to be individual accounts or accounts, individual accounts in my name totaling 17,500. Total of accounts in my wife's name totaling 120,780. Okay.
And does that also include 401ks, IRAs?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Checking, savings, 401ks, IRAs, SEPs, cash value of life insurance policies, money markets, CDs, everything.
Okay.
Okay. So they want to see what all those statements total on that day. So that's one piece. One piece is what we're going to call the assets in the bank. And then the other piece is just the income. So that's how much we're getting from Social Security or a pension or a combination. And that's where, I'm able to keep $30 a month from my income as the one going to the nursing home, and my wife can have $3,715 a month of her income. With me, transferring my excess income to her to get her up to that number if her income is less than that. So yes, two very separate categories, tests, if you will. How much is actually in the account versus how much is coming in on a monthly basis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I'd say the big thing here is again with like adult children who are involved in their parents' lives and paying for things or whatever. I can't stress enough the idea of if you're paying for things, if you're being reimbursed, really you got to keep good track of that stuff. You have to keep a spreadsheet, keep the receipts, keep it all. I will tell you the amount of paperwork that we have to gather from clients to fix some of these situations or to go back and rectify some of these things that I'm not faulting anybody for doing it. People aren't thinking about this. Okay, the reality is, for the most part, people aren't like, oh, well, I probably should keep track of things because my mom might need to apply for Medicaid in 5 years or 4 years. It's just not on our radar. But for those of you that are here, the three of you that are here today, and anybody else that decides to watch, I mean, these will save. Just a couple of these things will save so much time and effort and money on your parts. Just being aware of them.
But the irrevocable trusts that you mentioned, so they don't have control over the funds that may come in, but say if there are, a good amount of assets that pay income and they have them in a revocable trust now, just transfer them into an irrevocable trust, they still will be able to get the income now because like the kids or whoever they're gifting to or donating to, that happens upon their death, right? So that's the kids control those assets during their lifetime, but they still get the income during their lifetime. That's what I'm confused
about. So any assets that would be transferred to that irrevocable trust, that income is going to stay within that trust. It's not if it goes to, let's say me and my wife are the ones creating that trust. If that income kicks out to us, the nursing home is going to argue. They're going to see that on our bank statements when we during the 5-year look back, and they're going to argue that all the money then in that account that's in that trust that we're going to argue is protected. They're going to say it's not.
Right.
Now, the way that we access that money, to be very brief, and I didn't get into this earlier, and I'm going to I've got like just a couple more minutes and I've got to tune out, unfortunately, but the way it would work is that, say my son and my daughter my son's the trustee and my son and my daughter are the lifetime beneficiaries of that trust. Okay, the trust on its face looks like it's for their benefit. If my wife and I need money from that trust here and there as time goes on, my son as the trustee can write a check from the trust, an account in the trust, to himself or his sister, our daughter. That person, that child of ours, deposits the money in their personal bank account, and then they turn around and they write us a check from their personal bank account, not the trust, for that same amount of money. And that's how we sort of have a backdoor access to those funds. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
Okay. Now there's other things we have to think about. There's no tax issues when the money goes from the trust to our kids. It's a distribution from a trust. It's not income. But when our kids then turn around and write us a check, that's a gift from our kids to us. And so in that situation, we just have to be conscious of nothing really from a tax standpoint from us, but how much they're gifting us, because they can each gift us each $18,000 a year without filing a gift tax return and having to report it, et cetera.
Right,
So
right.
there could be other considerations, but yeah, we still have access to the money.
And so that whoever's the Medicaid police are looking at that and they're seeing, oh, there's a, $18,000 check coming to you from your kids, and they're not going to consider that
It's not income.
as income. Okay.
Right. I mean, now if you're on Medicaid, they can't kick you. If you're the person on Medicaid, they can't kick you over the limit. Right. So if I'm in the nursing home, I still can't have more than $17,500 in my account at the end of every month.
Oh, okay.
So then they spend it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, is that what you're saying?
Right. But I mean, what am I going to, if I'm in the nursing home? So again, that might go to my wife though, and not me. If I'm in the nursing home, I probably have little things to spend the money on.
Yeah.
Real estate, right?
Yeah.
So let's say they're really getting the money back to my wife. The way that Medicaid works, and kind of the last thing I'll leave you guys with, because I've got to go, unfortunately. I've got to call it 10:30. But after I'm approved for Medicaid, okay, so once I'm approved for Medicaid, my wife, and let's just say whatever, let's say it's a year after I apply, my wife, if she wants, she can turn around and sell the house. That's $600,000. And now she can buy a condo for $300,000. So now she's got $420,000 in the bank and a $300,000 condo. That's actually fine. Medicaid only cares about her asset, her having $120,000, a house and a car at the time I apply up to the time I'm approved. Once I'm approved, she could, as crazy as she could win the lottery and it wouldn't matter.
Interesting.
Okay. But
yeah,
obviously that's, not going to happen. I mean, most cases, but again, we do have people where they do end up selling, that spouse ends up selling the house because they've been, in some cases, they wanted to sell it and we're like, just hold on to it. I know you want to downsize. Right now is not the time. Wait until the Medicaid application gets approved, then downsize. Okay. So.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I
Matt,
appreciate it. Yeah.
Great advice. So many hoops to jump through for this. So we're really happy to have you. It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate all the questions, and if anybody has any questions that pop up, I put all my information in the chat box. Feel free to shoot me an email. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else to say.
I think, Matt, you've got another talk next month on the 2nd of October. So we'll be sure to tune in for that too.
Yes. More of an estate planning 101 talk. So trust and wills.
Yes, but the question and answers. Yeah, it'll be really great and informative. So
Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, of course. And thanks for having me, Amy, and the YMCA. And yeah, have a great day, everybody.
Thanks,
right.
you too.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Amy. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too. Bye-bye.